Hello, everyone. This is Brent Conway, Assistant Superintendent, and we're here for another Teaching and Learning podcast for the skillful implementation of high-quality curriculum with Pentucket. And this month, in January, we're focusing on the implementation of Eureka Squared, which is our kindergarten through grade 8 math curriculum. And we have some fantastic teachers with us today from a couple different buildings and different grade levels, and we'll get their perception of teaching math in general, what it's all about, how it's working for them, and some of the things that Eureka Squared has helped us to do. So I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Jen Tierney. I teach at the Page School, 4th grade, and I've been teaching 19 years.
Hi, my name's Amanda Ledoux. A lot of parents know me as Amanda Terry. I teach kindergarten at Sweetsir School, and this is my 7th year teaching kindergarten.
Hi, I'm Kelly Beaton. I teach 4th grade at the Page School, and this is my 40th year of teaching.
So 19 years comes quick, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Right? 40 years, Miss Beaton. Congratulations. Yeah. Wow. How about that? So we have teachers, 2 4th grade teachers, 2 different schools, kindergarten teacher, veteran, plenty of years experience as well, and someone who's been doing this long enough to know how things work as well. So thank you for all coming. So let's talk just in general about math and kids and what you see about kids and their engagement with math and how they like math in class.
I know at the kindergarten level, the students love math because they love being hands-on and working with manipulatives. I think that a lot of our focus is on number sense, and we're building number sense and building those foundational skills. And we're also intentionally teaching math vocabulary so that the students are using grade level vocabulary and applying that to their math skills and what they're doing. We often start with a fluency piece, usually kind of works in some counting, fluency with the vocabulary we're working with. Right now, our math unit is on comparison of objects by length and height. So we might warm up and do a fluency piece where I'm telling the kids to show me tall or shorter, and I'm showing them different objects, and they're using their bodies to let me know if an object is longer or shorter or taller or shorter. And then we move into our lesson piece where they're doing the learning activity. And it follows a very similar sequence to what we do in our Wit and Wisdom. So they know that there's a learning piece. They know that there's a piece where they're going to be going back to their seats and doing an application problem and putting their skills kind of to the test and using what they learned in the lesson. And they're using that at their seats. And they like to take ownership over their work, and they love to show what they've learned. So I feel like in kindergarten, students are very excited about math. It's one of their favorite parts of the day.
And I would actually say the same is true in 4th grade. I think if you ask my 4th graders, what's your favorite part of the day or what's your favorite subject, I think a lot of them would say math. Amanda kind of laid out the structure of the lessons, and the same is really true in 4th grade. One of the things that I've really liked with Eureka Squared is the student engagement and conversation that's happening about math. So the opportunities to do turn and talks, the math chat, giving them a potential problem that they have to grapple with, work through, and opportunities to discuss. That's been exciting for me to see as a teacher, to see how excited and engaged they are in that part of the lesson.
And just to piggyback on what Jen shared, also, even at 4th grade, the use of manipulatives to help build understanding, that is a huge piece of the program.
I know you both of you referenced sort of the engagement of students, but the engagement between each other and the opportunities for them to actually talk about math and give language and words to their reasoning, how they're thinking about math. I've seen that in all of your classrooms, and it's great to see you see 5-year-olds using some of the math terminology like endpoint, which we saw the other day, which I thought was really cool to see them using it and explaining it and using that math language. You see the same thing in 4th grade too. It's really powerful to see it when it happens. So do you have other thoughts on when you think about kids in math?
Sure. Circling back to oral discourse and the importance of that, I think students engaged in turn and talk and in small group discussions really helps to clarify their thinking. It builds deeper understanding, and that piece of the lessons, I think, is a really strong point of the program.
So we We have been using the original Eureka for, it was probably about 6 years. I think it was about 2017 or 2018 that they started using it across the district. And it provided sort of that consistent, coherent curriculum and programmatic language that we could use with kids. Before that, everyone was kind of doing different things. Different buildings had their own tools. Some people were using curriculum that was many years old because it was the resource they had in front of them. And others went and researched things and pulled things from various sources to teach. So the consistency became really important. But one thing we noticed over the years is that the original Eureka was really language heavy. It was very intense with the language. And as much as we're talking about wanting kids to use language, to break down and decompose language from math was a little challenging for a lot of our kids. So when we saw Eureka Squared come out, we piloted it with a few classrooms, particularly in classrooms where students had disabilities that might impact their language. And we saw that it was definitely more accessible. It didn't require the teachers to do so much more modifying for access. So that's when we went to Eureka Squared and we started to use it full across the board in every classroom this year. Anyone with insights, whoever wants to speak to it, about maybe what the difference they've seen in the curriculum, and not so much in the curriculum, but the impact it's had on students, one of the differences.
I mean, I've seen a really big impact in the students' confidence. I know that the original Eureka was very language-based and word-heavy, and when they would go back to apply the skills to their problem set, the directions would be so long, and they would see those words, and they'd look at me and say, I'm in kindergarten, I can't read. And I'd say, it's okay, we're all here to learn, and we can read the directions to you. And it was really overwhelming for them to see all of the wording, and it would instantly put them off. And so it was hard for them to have those moments to be independent and to be confident and realize, oh, I do know what I'm doing here. And now when they're going back to do the problem set, we do have the materials, we have the workbooks, and those have been really nice because they're colorful and they seem a little bit more appropriate for our students. And the language, has been made in a way that's accessible to them. So there will be still those vocabulary words, like back to referencing comparison, taller and shorter, but it's not going to be 3 sentences of what they're doing. It's just going to be like circle taller. So I feel like I've seen a big boost in their confidence with it, and that's been really wonderful to see.
So certainly kindergartners can't read. We know our 4th graders can, but what do you notice as a difference between that and 4th grade?
I think that the visual layout of the pages and the number of items on a page is much more accessible to the students, and they've definitely pared down the language, but I think what's important to note is that the rigor is still there. The expectations are still high. It's challenging the way that the problem sets are designed and specific items. There are challenging items for those students that are ready to be pushed a bit out of their comfort zone. So I still see rigor as a strength of the program.
And one of the things I was going to add was within the problem set, there's kind of a progression in terms of complexity. So, every day we approach the lesson with can-dos and must-dos. So the must-dos are, things that all students need to complete. And then for those students that complete those items, they can move on to some of those can-dos, which are a little bit more sophisticated. But there are still plenty of opportunities for all students to be challenged within the lesson.
That's good. The data over the last 6 years, even with COVID in the way, shows that, the work we've been doing has been successful. The percentage of our students scoring proficient is way up. So it's exciting to see. And I think preliminarily we can see that more students are going to have more accessibility to really grasp the concepts and build the fluency with Eureka Squared. So we look forward to the continued results and success. So one of the things, too, I think sometimes we hear about, maybe especially for parents, is new math or Common Core math is too complex. Why can't we just teach them, the algorithms? The fact is we do actually teach kids the standard algorithms, and we want them to use them. We practice them, and a lot of the fluency is around some of that. And that is a big part of Eureka Squared, but so is the conceptual understanding, and it's the things you've talked about, too, is understanding the concepts. And we try to give some kids some strategies to choose from when they need to. Most of what we want students to complete for the problem sets in math can be done with applying your standard algorithm, knowing your math facts. We want kids to really know those. We practice those. But there are circumstances where other strategies might be more appropriate and even more efficient than a standard algorithm. Can any of you think of an example where that sort of stands out, or a description of something that happens in the classroom where that might help?
I feel like it's a little bit trickier down at the kindergarten level when we're thinking about algorithms. But I do feel like, you know, a lot of our fluency pieces are more with number sense, and it's just working with numbers 1 to 10, and just for students to be able to recognize and read and write a number, and that helps their carryover and helps them to, you know, complete other skills and work through different math sets and things like that. So I feel like at the kindergarten level, that's kind of what I'm seeing.
I'm thinking about, along with the importance of the children learning the algorithms, there's also the importance of building their number sense and some of the work that we do with number theory and different properties in math, which years ago, teaching fourth grade, we never would have intentionally taught distributive property, commuter property, etc. Prime and composite numbers, and how that helps to build. I'm thinking how it connects to the pre-algebra component and that higher level thinking that we're expecting of children. So
Yeah, how it's, you know, in essence, you're talking about how we can decompose numbers and compose them and go back and forth.
exactly.
And Jen, I know in some of our conversation prior, as we head up here today, you were talking about the flexibility. Can you speak a little bit about that? Because that you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so one of the things when we're thinking about procedural fluency is that, you know, when you approach a problem, you may decide to approach it in a particular way, but it may be that once you get into the problem that you realize that you need to take a different approach or a different route. And so we want students developing that flexibility so that they can make those shifts on their own when they're approaching different problems.
The one thing I notice when I see it too is the opportunity for kids, whether it be through their verbal discourse around math or even in the written work, is to be able to sort of communicate their thinking as mathematicians. Is that, Kelly? I mean, you've been doing this for a little bit as far as math instruction goes. How have you seen that change?
I would say going back to intentionally teaching the math vocabulary and students using it as part of turn and talk, as part of, you know, explaining their reasoning behind why and how they solved a problem.
And then we see them use the problems, definitely intentionally engage kids in opportunities to do the mathematical practices. Mm-hmm. And that speaks a little bit to like how mathematicians think mm-hmm. and how they work with numbers, both composing, decomposing, and problem solving. How does that involve? How does that get involved with the students?
Sure. So as part of the daily lessons, we are also intentionally integrating the math practice standards, things such as attending to precision, perseverance, being able to make sense of models, being able to utilize the resources and tools that they have been taught. And that just helps to build their capacity so that they can be flexible with the fluency piece, that procedural fluency piece.
Yeah. Math is not something to be done. It is something to be applied to for problems, and I think that's how it is done, whether it's models. We see all sorts of visual models in Eureka Squared, and, mm-hmm. and then even when you leave math class, it's applying math, whether it be in science or social studies or something else that allows you to do that. So, but a lot of explicit instruction and opportunities to practice in Eureka Squared, yeah. Any of you have other thoughts about some of the things you've seen with the students in class with math?
I've seen a lot of the kindergarten students be more willing to take a risk where there are those opportunities for turn and talks and, you know, mix and mingles and different opportunities to talk with other students. Sometimes some of the kids that might feel more shy or not as confident raising their hand to, you know, say an answer in front of the group, they tend to feel more comfortable speaking with a peer. And so I do feel like it's helping them to build their language. And, you know, and we often say use your math words and expand your sentence and things like that. And I feel like it's helping them to, like I said, build that verbal discourse and really take pride and ownership in their learning and feel proud of themselves. So I mean, it's all about how they feel in kindergarten, and I feel like they feel really proud of the work that they're doing, and I'm very proud of them. There's some really big words that we're using, like Brent had said that they were learning the word endpoint the other day, and they went to work on a problem set, and one of the kids was like, well, you know, it's hard to tell in the picture if this is lined up with an endpoint. And so we talked, well, what's a strategy you could do? And the kids decided they could draw a line from one object to the other to make sure the endpoint was lined up in the picture. And, you know, I think that a lot of people don't realize the expectation that we have on our kindergartners. And they're working with some really big words and they're doing some really great thinking. And, there can be some misconceptions about kindergarten and what we're learning and what we're doing. And
They are being mathematicians.
They are
is what
being
they
mathematicians, and they're learning these really great big things that are going to be their foundational skills to help them when they get up to the 4th grade level. So I've seen just a huge boost. Like I said, I've said this many times, but in their confidence, which for kindergartners, that's a big, big part of, their success in school.
One example that comes to mind is we had done a unit on metric measurement and linear conversions, and then fast forward to our literacy program, and we're learning about extreme environments and mountain ranges, and the connection that the students made and being able to do the conversions and looking at the altitude of mountains. And it was just such a cool moment to see them connect what they had done in math class, and this is why we're learning it, and it was purposeful,
Right. The classic math question.
Yes.
When are we ever going to use this in real life?
Exactly.
It's when you're lost in a mountain range, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what it really comes down to for me, I've seen my students' confidence grow tremendously. I think about where we started at the beginning of the year, and we had our work cut out for us, but it's been a lot of hard work day in and day out, and I'm seeing their confidence grow. I'm seeing them feel good about themselves. They're seeing the growth. And I think, it also goes back to the engagement piece, and a huge shift with this program has been the opportunities for discussion. And I think it engages all students. I think that within those conversations, as you work your way through the math chat, it's like there's those built-in scaffolds for students that might not know what to say at first, but as they're listening to their peers and engaging in that way, it then gives them an entry point for jumping into the conversation. So that's been really nice to see.
So one last sort of question or thing to pose is, so there's direct instruction, you're teaching whole class, you're working with kids in small groups, kids are working with each other, and they have opportunities to practice. What type of strategies do you use so that at the end of the lesson, you have a sense of whether the kids learned what they were supposed to learn, and then what do you do with that information?
Sure. So there is an exit ticket that's built into every lesson, so that's tremendously informative in terms of, understanding whether or not the students have, a solid grasp of the concept or the skill that day. I'm also thinking about sometimes there's just an end of lesson question, kind of like an EOD, end of day, where they talk about, what is one interesting thing that you learned. And again, having them engage. I think about the change in math instruction over the years that I've been teaching. And, it used to be that you, as the teacher, you were the sage on the stage and you were just up there, even at the elementary level. And now, because of the student engagement piece, they're active learners. And I think it's, they're making more connections and more successful.
And I think along with those exit tickets, as students are working a little more independently on the problem set, that looks different ways. Sometimes it's students working independently and I'm circulating around the room, with the special education teacher or the para that's with me, and we're checking in with students as they're going along. Sometimes it may even be that I'm working with a small group who might need a little bit more support to work through aspects of the problem set, but it helps me to kind of get a gauge as to where everybody is, whether it's in that smaller group or it's me circulating throughout the room as they're working on the problem set, along with, the exit ticket in the end.
Yeah, I agree with that. We don't have at the kindergarten level many exit tickets, but we do have like a whole group wrap up. And sometimes there's a visual component on the smart board, and we often will end with some type of question, and I'll pose the question, and it kind of can give me a good feel as to who kind of is using the vocabulary, who's understanding what we're talking about. And often I'll have them bring their journals, so I'll have their problem set right out in front of them, and so I can just take a quick scan. And when the kids do a turn and talk, they sometimes notice like, oh wait, I didn't have that number here, or they kind of end up self-correcting because they turn to their peer and they realize something's different, and then they and their peer work through it and decide, oh, you know what, actually I had the right number here because look, this happened. So I feel like it gives them an opportunity to reflect and review what they did and kind of learn from each other. So that wrap up time and the end of task question that we do, that gives me a good insight as to who's doing what. And I also, very similar to what you said, I circulate. Sometimes they're working independently and I'm circulating around. Sometimes I pull a group with clipboards on the rug and we're working through a problem set as a group. So things like that, just to get a feel as to where they are and what they're learning and what we need to work on.
Well, thank you all for coming. This is I think you provide a lot of insights. Parents get worksheets home, or they see an assessment home, they get homework, something like that. Rarely do they really have insight into what sort of it looks like and what the whole purpose is. And hopefully this is helpful to folks at home too. So to all of you, thank you for coming. And to everyone at home, we look forward to next month in February. We'll have a new episode for you that'll pair up with our blog post. So our blog post on Eureka Math is up as well on the Teaching and Learning site, and hopefully you can catch that link somewhere. And thanks for listening.